Boris Johnson was due before the London Assembly yesterday to really answer questions for the first time about what I'm going to describe. Well, I'll check with my next guest, but I think I'm going to describe it as a missing £40 million worth of public money. That's probably not an entirely fair description, but this is an entirely fair description. Boris Johnson is, even by the standards of 21st century Britain, the most despicable politician that I can ever remember encountering. His absolute disregard for the truth, his cavalier attitude to the country, his disgraceful treatment of everything from the Irish border issue to this £40 million worth of public money that is missing renders him utterly unfit for public office, and in the current climate that means he'll probably be Prime Minister by Christmas. Will Hurst is the managing editor of The Architect's Journal. What happened yesterday, Will, and why have you become the story?
Hi, James. Yes, well, this was a long-awaited appearance of Boris before the London Assembly's Oversight Committee. So he rocked on down to City Hall, having been summoned by the committee, the first time a former London mayor has ever been summoned by the Assembly. He was quite late. I'm not sure whether that was by design or not.
Yes, well, he was probably outside deliberately ruffling his hair. He usually does that before public appearances so that people think he's a charming old rascal.
That's right. And it began, very civilly, and he was displaying some of his charm, saying how nice it was to be back and all that sort of thing. But it rapidly descended into something else because he was completely unwilling over sort of 45 minutes, an hour. He was there to answer any of the factual questions that the Assembly members had. And as you say, there was a point at which he attacked lots of people, mainly his successor Sadiq Khan. There was no admission of anything that he would have done differently, really, on the Garden Bridge himself. And he was saying that the loss of money was entirely down to Sadiq.
Is that defensible in any way? Does that even begin to make sense to you?
No, it doesn't make sense, because all the money, Sadiq didn't commit any further money. I mean, there might have been a very small amount of spending, because, if he'd have cancelled it on his first day in the office, perhaps.
But he didn't. He commissioned a report by Margaret Hodge, didn't he, to find out whether or not they should put more money into it.
I mean, one of the things that Boris said, which was true, was that Sadiq has blown hot and cold on it. You can't deny that.
No, absolutely. He seemed in favour of it when we first interviewed him on this programme, but he changed his tune.
Yeah, but no, the spending decisions were Johnson's. And, I think he was on the ropes towards the end of the session, because he was asked about some of the spending at the very end of his second term, when the project was clearly in a huge amount of trouble, didn't have anything near the amount of money that it needed to get built from private funds and corporations. It didn't have permission for building on the south side of the river from the freeholder there, Coin Street Community Builders. It didn't have the guarantee signed off, which was the mayor's attempt to underwrite the maintenance and operation costs. So there were all kinds of problems, but he was committing, and TfL were committing, millions of pounds of London taxpayers' money and millions of pounds of central government money.
And ducking some of the safeguards that are in place. This was the directive that he signed, I believe, that sort of watered down some of the conditions that would have protected this money, I suppose, or would have at least made it harder to spend. And he was asked why he signed that directive.
Yes. So what this is about is there was £7 million, a tranche of £7 million that went into the project, to the Garden Bridge Trust, from both TfL and the Department for Transport in early 2016. So half and half. And as you say, there were these conditions in place through the funding agreement which were designed to protect the public purse. And at least one, and probably two, of those conditions plainly were not met, because they did not have the money to fund at least 5 years of operation and maintenance cost after, this is the trust, didn't have the money for 5 years of maintenance and operation cost once the bridge was complete. But TfL said they were satisfied, and therefore the money was released. Civil servants at the DfT never agreed with that and had to be overruled by ministers in order to release the money, because they were so concerned about it. But what the Assembly picked up on yesterday was that a few months later, in April 2016, Johnson then presided over a watering down of the exact same condition which was attached to the mayoral guarantee, to say that instead of asking the trust to have the actual money in place for 5 years costs, all they had to do was show a satisfactory funding strategy for 5 years, which is obviously much easier to achieve. And he could not answer.
He said he couldn't remember. Why did you do it, Boris Johnson? I can't remember why I did it, is his defence.
Yeah.
It is incredible. It's not funny anymore.
No, a mayoral direction is a big thing, and I just don't believe that he can't remember that. I think he simply couldn't answer the question.